I'll just start the recording and then hand it over to you.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Um, Hi, everybody. Welcome. Jack, I'm going to go ahead and take over screen share to put
sure.
the presentation up. Hold on, just checking. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Great. Let me just make a couple of adjustments here so I can see all of you. Um, okay. Well, hi. Welcome, everybody, to this session. My name is Jay Sikes. Pronouns are they, them. And I'm going to be sharing with you during today's presentation how our district-based intern program is putting in place processes for the TPA secondary passing standard and kind of what we learned through the processes we put in place and what we're noticing about our candidate data. So the folder is available. It looks like for whatever reason, the chat feature is turned off on today's presentation, or I would love to say, can y'all introduce yourself in the chat? But we'll just have to have some flexibility here and go with what tools we have working on Zoom. Um,
Can I offer just an idea? I was trying to like
sure.
brainstorm quickly how we could
Yeah, go
do
ahead,
this.
Juliet.
Here's my thought. If you could, I'm trying to do it for you, but I'm not sure if I have access, but I think I can make it. I'm going to create a Google Doc in your folder
Okay,
that we can share, and then people
perfect.
can go in that folder. And if you have comments you want to make, we can just treat that Google Doc as a chat.
That'd be great. Thank you
Okay,
so
let
much.
me work on that.
Okay, all right. Juliet is judging behind the scenes and working on our technology. Thank you, thank you. Cool. Um, So I want to share a little bit about today's session outcomes. Really, what we'll be covering is you'll be learning kind of how the Yola Solano Center for Teacher Credentialing intern program engaged in an analysis of candidate data, both TPA data and candidate demographic data. And really, we use those results to create processes and inform and advise and better support our candidates with the TPA secondary passing standard option. And then what I've provided for you in the Google folder is several resources that you can turn around and use within your own teacher preparation programs. So feel free to modify. I'm a firm believer in no need to reinvent the wheel when one wheel already exists, just enhance it. So again, welcome in. We know the chat feature is not working, but the Google Doc that Juliet's working on, if you'd like to just do a little typing in there and be like, hi, here's who I am. And then once that document is up and live, you can use that to ask questions on, and I'll try my best to monitor that while I'm also presenting. You can also use the raise hand feature to ask questions at any time throughout today's presentation. And I also just want to say I'm so glad to see y'all. It's great to be presenting to you all today. A little bit about me. So I direct the teacher intern program with the Yola Solano Center for Teacher Credentialing. Davis Joint Unified is our LEA. So we're a little bit of a unique program in that, most district-based intern programs are housed out of a county office of education, and we are housed out of a school district. Our program was actually we started with an induction program in the late 90s, and we're a consortium-based program. And then in 2017, I came on board and was hired to develop and get the intern program accredited by the CTC. So we've been up and running since 2017. I did my own credentialing in upstate New York, and I am a product of California schools. So I actually grew up right down the road from where I'm working in Dixon, California. And I share that information with you all because for me, coming back and leading a district intern program within the area that I grew up is extremely heartfelt. So I feel my work is both, head centered and like, we're here to really help our local districts address the teacher shortage and help support prospective teachers in accessing a teacher credential program. And at the same time, it's very heartfelt. It's very rewarding for me to support schools that I attended as a young one with teacher credentialing. I've also worked in several Bay Area schools as district and site level administrator, worked for UC Berkeley in coaching their Tier 1 and Tier 2 admin candidates in PASC and CASC programs. And some of the ways that I support teacher development up and down the state is through my work, volunteer work at the CTC, serving both on BIR, doing site reviews and program reviews, served on the CSTP Refresh Committee, and also a member of the COA with my colleague who I can see on screen, Alan Hallis. So that's a bit about me. And then I want to share a little bit about the Olosano Center for Teacher Credentialing. So
Can I
here's
jump in before you start there? I'm sorry.
Please, yeah,
I
go
was
ahead,
trying to
Juliet.
politely interrupt. Just so everybody knows, there is a doc in the folder called Strand 3 Session 1 Shared Doc. So you should be able to access that and use that as our de facto chat.
Yes, thank you, Juliet, for
Stop interrupting.
the chat room hack there. Google Docs saves the day. Great. So a little bit about the Olosano Center. You can see our mission is posted there. We, as I shared, have an induction program. We also have the California, what we call K-TIP. So it's a California Agricultural Teacher Induction Program for the whole state of California. We have CTE, and then we have the intern program. And our intern program covers 3 credential areas: multiple subject, Ed Specialist Mild Mod, Ed Specialist Extensive. And we're supporting teachers from Contra Costa County all the way up to Mendo County. So our reach has expanded. We serve predominantly teachers in Yolo and Solano County. So we're working a lot with teachers that are in rural school districts. For our larger reach, where we're Contra Costa up to Mendocino, it's because we are helping support teachers that do not have access to a credential program based on the credential type, where they're living, or based on the job offer they have in their local district. And then one of the pieces we really hold is that we at the Olosano Center really believe in reducing barriers to helping prospective teachers access teacher credential programs and navigate through credential programs. And I think I kind of hold that value, and you'll see that come through during today's presentation as we look at some of the processes we put in place around the secondary passing standard. Cool. So again, I just want to encourage folks that at any time throughout today's presentation, if a question comes up, just invite you to use the raise hand feature. I'll try and see if I can hop over to look at the Google Doc, but it will be a little challenging for me to do both. So please ask questions as they come up. Here's what we're going for today. I'll cover a little bit about the secondary passing standard. I'll share the process that we use at the Yolo Solano Center and cover some data. And then we'll engage in some discussion, and then you'll leave today with some resources that you can use. So a little bit about the secondary passing standard. As we know, this is the information that's the most revised information that candidates may qualify for the secondary passing standard if they score within a negative 1.0 standard error of measurement on the TPA. And for the 25-26, the side condition of having no more than a score of 1 in any rubric was removed. And the candidate can qualify if they have that in place, as well as if the program, the local program, has documented evidence that from other sources that the candidate has demonstrated competency in the TPEs. And so that's really where the processes that I'm going to cover come into play. So it's like, how did we as a program identify that evidence or gather that evidence, and how do we work with the candidate to support them in that? So here's our process 1.0. So when this, when the secondary passing standard came out, I think it's 2 years ago now, the first piece we started to do was we're like, oh, how's this going to work, right? And we had at that time 1 intern that qualified. And so we put communication out to our graduating group of interns that were our year 2 candidates and said, hey, here's the secondary passing standard option. Here's the criteria that you need to meet in order to qualify for it. And again, at that time, we had 1 intern that qualified. So we held an advisement meeting with that intern, looked at the TPA exam. We looked at their credential timeline. In other words, when was their credential going to expire? And then we met one-on-one to look at what evidence could be identified within our local program that would support the intern in meeting that secondary passing standard. So that was our 1.0 process. And then we began to notice some pieces as we had as the commission put out more information about the TPA secondary passing standard, and sort of as we began to look deeper at our processes. And so one of the pieces we did next was begin to put in our orientation and our advisement meetings with our candidates, just be very transparent about this option. So these next two slides are from our fall orientation with our year 2 interns, and we also put it back for them in the spring orientation. Go, remember this that you saw in the fall? Here it is again in the spring. And we want to point out to our candidates, here are the ways in which they can be eligible. So all 3 of these criteria have to be met. They're enrolled in our program. They've met all other requirements. So we, in terms of all requirements, we say they have to be meeting and passing all of their coursework, which means that we won't sit down and do an advisement or look at their secondary passing standard and look for evidence until they're in that second semester of year 2, right? So it's not something that our year 1s would necessarily qualify for, yet we notify them to say, this is an option, and here's when we would look at it to be a possible option for you. And then this is this year's chart that you're looking at here, that the intern teachers earned an eligible secondary passing standard score on the Cal TPA is detailed by this chart. So this is the 25-26 versions. And we are a program that uses the Cal TPA. So this next slide, again, just providing to the intern teachers, here are some possible sources of documented evidence. So it would be their TPA score rubric, their rubric from exam that shows scores 3 or above. We would consider that as acceptable evidence. Observation notes, those would be coming from annotated videos or notes from their field supervisor that demonstrates that the intern is applying within that TPE, as well as coursework assignments. And we hold for our candidates that meeting standard in coursework assignments, as well as an overall course as a grade of C or above. So those are the 3 main sources of evidence that we utilize to look at whether a candidate would be eligible for that secondary passing standard criteria. So process 2.0, again, we improved on our processes, and we began, as I shared, informing our interns during orientation, also during their field supervision course, and within their TPA support course. We also increased our notification to our interns about the TPA exam submission dates along with their credential timeline. So one of the pieces we do, particularly for our multiple subject candidates, during the month of February, is we say, hi, your intern credential is going to expire September 1 of this year. You have, until that date to complete your intern program requirements. And then we provide them with the TPA submission date requirements, as well as the score release dates. The other piece that we began to do this year is enroll all of our interns who have yet to complete the TPA. However, their credentials have expired, into a course. So remember, going back to this slide here, in order to be eligible, an intern teacher has to be enrolled within the intern program. So for our candidates where their credential has expired, they're not eligible to be enrolled in a field supervision course. We're not extending their intern credential, yet we're enrolling them in our intern hub course, which is a resource course that houses all of our TPA documents. I also have begun this year providing our year 3 interns, so interns on an active intern credential, with TPA support sessions. There's 4 per semester that they can attend. We make these support sessions available to interns who have expired credentials if they're needing additional support. And these 2 pieces are at no cost to the candidates. The TPA support sessions for our interns that are on active intern credentials, and again, these are for our year 3 folks, is part of their field supervision requirements for that year. So our year 3 interns are enrolled in field supervision. They're receiving formal observations from their field supervisors, and then they're also participating in these support sessions that I'm facilitating. And then the other thing that we did on our process was that we created and revised some of our internal documents used for recording evidence of our candidates meeting that secondary passing standard. And again, here are some of the evidence pieces that we utilize. So this is our process. Our 1.0 over here, kind of like, okay, we have one teacher, what do we do, right? And then what we started to notice, and then sort of building upon that process. And then this slide, this represents a small data set. And this is what we began to notice, or what we're beginning to notice about our candidates, both in terms of the demographics, who are qualifying for the secondary passing standard. So to date, we've had 4 candidates that have qualified. Here's their credential type. You're seeing their credential status at the time that they received their TPA scores, noting that they qualified for that secondary passing standard score, the race and ethnicity of the candidates. And then all of these candidates received the secondary passing score on their first TPA cycle. So you can see what cycle they were on at that time. And this, just a side note, these are the scores from the 24-25 multiple subject or ed specialist versions. And then this last column here is what their score was on TPA cycle 2. So their first cycle, they qualified under secondary passing standard. Second cycle, they passed. So this is, again, a small data set, but this is what we're noticing within our program. And then I think what we'll do now, given the information I've shared, is we're going to head into some breakout rooms and just invite you in. I think we can set you up probably with trios to just share informally what is your program's current process for working with candidates who may qualify for the secondary passing standard. And what are you noticing? What are you noticing about those candidates that qualify? So I'm going to turn off the share and I'm going to set up some breakout rooms right now. So bear with me while I get some. So you're going to be in rooms of 3 to 4. It looks like I don't have the option to put a timer on here. So actually, let me see when I create. Yes, I can do that. Got it. So let's do this. We'll take about 7. We'll do 7 minutes in the breakout room, and then we'll come back together in the whole group. So rooms are going to open up. I invite you to head on in, introduce yourself, and respond to these 2 questions. And again, if I had the chat, I would put them in there, but I will see if I can just verbally share them out once you're in your breakout rooms. All right, here we go, y'all.
Thank you.
Hi, Alice. We're in breakout rooms. I've got you going over to room 3, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I was in another meeting and I just came as soon as I could get here.
Not to worry. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back, folks. Hope that got some thinking going and some collaborative ideas floating around the Zoom rooms. Before we go back to the presentation, just want to invite folks if there's anything that you would like to share regarding what you discussed in your small Zoom room, just invite you to do that now. Yeah, Jenna.
Yeah, I have a question. I brought this up in our group. I have had the CTC inform students that they qualify. And then I have had some students be surprised when I reach out to them. So could you just clarify, does the CTC notify every candidate who qualifies, or is it the institution's responsibility to notify the student? I feel like I've seen both.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to answer just from a program experience, and then Juliet, if you're okay being on the spot and kind of answering on behalf of the CTC. What I noticed during the first year that this became operational was that the CTC sent an email to the candidate that we had that qualified, as well as to us as the program. In subsequent years, what I've noticed is that that communication hasn't necessarily happened, but I may be incorrect. I'm kind of like, I watch my candidates' Cal TPA scores like a hawk. And as soon as they come out, I'm like, oh, this person qualifies. And so I'm usually the one that's like, guess what? But Juliet, if there's anything you want to elaborate on or clarify.
So the email actually doesn't come from the CTC, but it does come from evaluation
From
systems.
evaluation
And
systems.
we did work with them to write the email, but when the scores are released, everybody who qualifies for the secondary passing standard, all candidates, and their programs are CC'd, will receive a notification. And that notification will then direct people to the page on our website, which I will put in our virtual chat page, that has all the information about the secondary passing standard.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Lupe.
Hi, yeah. Just to, in our group, just to follow up on that question that was asked earlier is, we put the notification about the secondary process into our CalTP handbook. And so what happens is that we state in there, if you don't pass, the following will happen. You will get, the coaching, and you can also may qualify for the secondary. And then we provide criteria. And then we also have an application that the student candidate has to complete. And then they send it to me, and then because they have all their results, right, from Cal TPA. And so then I'm able to put together my committee that we have established, and then we review the student application. So I guess we don't really depend on the information, the student getting notified, because the student gets notified right away. And then we've created enough communication with the student candidates that they know, oh, I can do this if I don't pass. Because that really is very foremost in students when they submit is, what if I don't pass? And that's when, because I also teach the courses. We teach courses in Cal TPA. I do both multiple subject and a single subject. So I hear that a lot. But just to add to the conversation that, yeah, sometimes they get the information and they don't. For us, it's been kind of sporadic. So anyway.
Well, thank you. And thanks for sharing out your institution's process. So that notification in the handbook and then kind of the subsequent process. Awesome. Any other comments that came up in your small groups that you want to highlight? I used my 15-second wait time as a teacher. Moving on to the next set of slides. I'm going to put the screen share back on and go over with you all what our program's process is like. So a couple of resources that you'll see in the folder is the first thing we work with is a TPA rubric or alignment document. Looks like, let's see. Well, let me do this. I think, can you see my screen? Can you see this rubric document, or are you seeing the presentation? You're seeing the rubric document. Awesome. So this was created. I want to give credit to my colleagues up the road at Sacramento County Office of Ed. That they created an initial document, which I've just kind of didn't revise it, just increased because we have the extensive support needs credential, and they don't yet have that credential. And so what you'll see here is this first tab is the 24-25 version 7, the multiple subject TPA, and version 3 of the mild mod TPA. And it shows the different rubrics and what TPE elements were addressed within those rubrics. And then what I did for you all is looking at our current version, I went in and crosswalked the rubrics with what TPAs were covered in those rubrics at the element level. Again, if we're thinking about this as a local program decision or like what our processes are, here we're looking at like, okay, this element is addressed within this rubric. Again, went down to the element level here versus keeping it at the standard level, just depending on how detailed you want to be as a program. So you'll see this for multiple subject, and then the subsequent tabs are mild to moderate, and then extensive support needs. So one of the things we do with candidates when we see that they have a qualifying score is we look at their TPA rubric, and then we begin to look at like what TPEs were covered in that. And then we use a worksheet, and I'm going to share with you kind of our first version of a worksheet here. Can you see this? Cool. All right, so this is a sample. This is Papa Smurf, how they were doing on their multiple subject, cycle 1, TPA. And so this is from the previous eligible secondary passing standards, right? So this is based on the multiple subject version 7. And what we did with this particular candidate was look at, right, the TPEs covered, what they scored. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And you'll also see this in the folder, what they scored on their TPA cycle rubric, and then look for a secondary piece of evidence from the program. So this particular candidate, right, they scored at a 3 or above in a number of places on their TPA cycle rubric, right? Here's where they got below a 3. So then we needed to look for 2 pieces of evidence from within the program. And so what we began to do was look at their coursework, right? What grade did they get in their course? And look at also particular assignments that addressed specific TPE elements. And one of the things that we do as a program, and this is, I want to share and just say this is a work in progress, is as we go through our syllabus and we revise and as we're all doing that iterative process, is on each of our assignments, and here's a sample here, is we put the specific TPEs assessed within that assignment. So this is for ED 352, teaching English learners. This is an assignment one of our candidates would do within this course. And we're very direct and like, here's what's getting assessed on this particular assignment. And then we're providing them their evaluation criteria. In a perfect world, you would see this for every single one of our assignments. Again, I just want to be transparent. It's a work in progress. And one of the pieces that it's very helpful when we have this is that we can go right to an assignment and go, oh, here's the specific TPE that was addressed. What grade did this candidate get on this assignment? And that is a solid piece of evidence for the secondary passing standard. Also, side note, for those of you prepping for program review, this is really wonderful for a review team to have when looking at how does your syllabi align to the various TPEs. So it makes it just a very friendly process in that way too. Okay, so coming back to, here we go, to Papa Smurf and their secondary passing standard. So again, we looked at their coursework, and then we began to also look at their field supervision, so their clinical practice experience. And as a program, one of the pieces that we use is we use Go React and require that our candidates videotape each semester a minimum of 2 of their observations and annotate them, and the field supervisor annotates them. The field supervisor must also note take, or they could video record 2 other observations. So they're doing 6 and 6 each semester, or are videotaped or note taked. And the field supervisor on their note taker document also is identifying what TPEs are addressed. So one of the great things about using Go React is I can go into a candidate's course, pull up their video, and get a direct analysis of what TPEs were covered within that particular lesson. And then what I'm doing is looking at the comments made by the field supervisor and looking at, is the candidate at an applying level within this particular observation. So again, for this sample document, you can see this candidate met the secondary passing criteria through one, their rubric scores, their coursework, and then again, field supervision. And then this final document here, this developing as a professional educator rubric, is we aligned it to a document we use called the descriptions of practice. It's a candidate self-assessment tool, and it's a tool that they assess themselves on, and then the field supervisor assesses them on, and it takes place in the spring. Because TPE 6 is often a hard one to see through direct classroom observations, the data for that is gathered through candidate self-assessment and through the field supervisor's interaction with the candidate, as well as other school staff on their school site. So we use that as another piece of evidence to then identify that this candidate, yes, had met the secondary passing standard. We keep this document as within the candidates folder, and then as we move forward to recommend for the prelim credential, we transfer this information onto CL 911. So this is a blank one here. On this form, they're looking for evidence. We need to provide evidence at the standard level or the domain level versus the element level. Yet again, as a program, what we are kind of holding is we want to be able to see that the candidate has met a number of elements within one particular domain for us to feel like, yes, this candidate is at that applying level within that TPE. So that is a little bit about our process. Using the rubric alignment, the worksheet, and then transferred onto CL 911. And then just to highlight for you, another piece I provided for you in the folder is we improved our worksheet from the sample one I was sharing with you. We now have, we created essentially kind of like a candidate workbook that we're piloting this year, where all of the documents for our candidates are in one single Google file or Google Sheet workbook. And so we have in that a secondary passing standard worksheet. This one is aligned. We've got, actually, this is last year's one with the 24-25 version. And then the second tab here is the 25-26 version. So we have the information here of what they need to do to meet. And then spaces here for us as a program to begin recording evidence. We had initially set this up where we were like, here, candidate, go off and do this on your own. And we found that it just was, because it's a newer process for them, that it wasn't very candidate friendly. And again, holding out that we're, as a program, really looking to reduce and remove barriers for our candidates in accessing and completing a credential program. We found that meeting one-on-one with the candidate and going over this document together and filling it out together was a much more successful process. The meetings take about 20 minutes with a candidate. And oftentimes I'm going through their coursework with them, or I'm like, all right, let's look at this particular course. Show me this assignment, or let's talk about your field supervision. So they might be coming up with evidence at the same time. And it's an iterative process. We're going back and forth and seeing what we can gather and then adding that onto this particular worksheet. So that's our process and how we are addressing it as a program. And let me just pause and see if there are other questions that have come up since I went over those pieces. Yeah. Is it Asia or Aja?
It's Asia. Yeah,
Asia.
Hi, everybody. I just want to thank you for this session. I think what I'm realizing is that we've put too much of this process on the coordinator, and I really am enjoying thinking about the collaboration with students, meeting with students, having them sort of take initiative and go through their assignments and have at least a first run at it. and then, working with them to complete the materials. So that has been kind of huge for me in this session. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you for that feedback, and you're welcome. I too noticed that when we have a TPA coordinator, someone that teaches our TPA courses. So our candidates are enrolled in a TPA course, all 4 semesters. They're in the intern program, and really, for that particular course, like we hold that the coordinator, like they're focused on really instructing and supporting the candidate in navigating the TPA, right? Like really helping them get through like the content, like what is the exam. And I'm holding like as program lead, how do I help when we're seeing a qualifying score? How do I help that candidate navigate a process that's unfamiliar to them, right? So I'm holding the lens of like advocacy and also like being really transparent of like, here's a process that's available for candidates. Yeah. Other questions or comments that have come up?
I have another question.
Sure, Jenna.
A conversation we have on our team is how much we're allowed to like directly point or handhold, and then how much do we coach? And so just to clarify on the sample that you showed us, do you point to like example assignments? So or yeah, so we have the thing of like, are we allowed to say, do you remember this assignment? This would be a good evidence, or do you have the students self-reflect and try to recall the assignment? Where we have different theories on our team, and so we just are curious what other programs do and how much they hold hands and how
Sure.
much, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we're looking at like the TPA submission and what are acceptable and unacceptable forms of support, right? We kind of can look at that lens, like how much we place the onus on the candidate, right? Here, we're looking at an available option for candidates who have already submitted their TPA. And so I go more to how do I help a candidate navigate a newer process for them? So we're looking at coursework together. I have a better sense of what TPAs are covered in their courses because I'm staring at our course syllabi all the time. I'm spot checking their field supervision videos. So our program is we're a smaller program. We have this year we have 77 candidates, and we're a mighty team of 5 within our entire unit, and 2 for the intern program. So um, that's kind of how we're choosing to address it. And I know I'll sit down with a candidate and go, hey, this course, covered these TPEs. Can you show me this assignment? Or here's what I've found. What else are you finding? The other piece is we use Canvas as our learning management system, which houses all of our candidates' coursework and assignments. Once a semester ends, they lose access to their courses. And so that's another piece where I don't want to disadvantage a candidate because they can't remember or they can't find an assignment that they turned in well over a year ago. Cool.
Thank you. We also lose access to
Yeah.
our, yeah.
Let's do this. So I shared with you kind of what we use for sample evidence. We're going to hop into breakout rooms one more time, and then we'll move to close. So a question I have up for you all in the presentation is, really based on what was covered in today's presentation, what are some processes that you might implement within your teacher prep program to support teachers with this secondary passing option? Let me go ahead and open up the breakout rooms one more time. And let's see, let me put on options. Maybe we'll take about 5 minutes together. And I'm going to open up the rooms. Hey, friends, welcome back. We still have some folks coming in through the Zoom rooms.
Got some great ideas here. Thank you so much.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oops, looks like we've got someone in the waiting room. Cool. Want to just invite folks to share out any ideas that you shared in your small group that would be helpful for the whole group to hear. We'll just take a couple of comments, and then I have a few more slides before we close.
Yes, I mentioned how, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Alan, and then we'll go over to Becky.
No worries. Just, how each program should know where we're assessing the things being measured on the MPA or LPA, because we all get to do that beautiful matrix. And, it's kind of a copy paste apples to apples to give those candidates that little push.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, Becky.
Thank you. I appreciate seeing the documents because my director is doing this. Had done the crosswalk to the news and all down to the elements, but seeing the fillable form that you have, I already emailed her and said, wait till you see this resource because I don't think hers is organized quite as well and it is a fillable. And I think that'll help us. So I appreciate the organization, those tips and the resources because what we've been doing this, we felt like we're doing well, but I see this as taking this to the next level.
Awesome. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah, and that form, the Google sheet that I shared with you, let me bring us back to screen share here. This worksheet is, again, it's part of a larger candidate workbook. So all of this gets auto-populated based on the candidate intake form. And then as the program lead, I'm like, okay, what was your TPA cycle? Great, literacy cycle. And then we're literally filling in these boxes together. And then once it's complete, I download it as a PDF, provide it back to the candidate, put it in their electronic file. And then that then goes to our program manager when the credential recommendations happen. So they have that evidence piece along with CL 911 to cross-check.
I have a follow-up question to this form. Do you
Sure.
ever give the form to the student prior to the one-on-one meeting just to have them do a little bit of head work, or do you literally do all the work together?
I did that with the first candidate. And again, because it was a newer process for them, they were kind of like, how do I deal with this, right? For other candidates, once I see so our other candidates, again, we've had 4 total to date. Once I've seen that they have a qualifying score, I send them this form to say, here's what we're going to be working on together, right? So I give them the PSA information. There's a hyperlink to the PSA in this form. And I go, here's what we're going to do together. So start gathering or be thinking of, and then we set up a Zoom meeting and we go through it together.
Great.
Cool. I've got 2 more. Oh, Stephen, go ahead.
Hey Jay, thank you. Definitely provided some excellent information and something I'm going to take away. So, kind of building off what like Jenna's question. So that's what we do in our program is we give them the document. It's totally intern based. They fill it out, give it back to us. Which I like what you do is meeting with the intern because kind of what I was relaying to my group is that we sometimes we get this back and forth like, well, that assignment doesn't really work. And now we have this email conversation that's happening like, here, how about this? Here, how about that? And I really think it would be helpful for us as a program to really do that one-on-one meeting because I think that the 20 minutes that you spend meeting with the intern will eliminate what could be 10 or 12 emails back and forth to each other over the course of a couple of days. So I really look forward to working with our program to see how we can implement that as part of our process. So thank you for the whole session. As a matter of fact,
Sure. Yeah. Great point. And that's, I mean, like I just found that it's more efficient, right? It's more efficient
Yeah.
for us as a program and
For
for the candidate, right? They're already coming in and like their morale is a little bit down. They're like,
Mhm.
great, I didn't pass this test. Now I got to figure out, can I pass this test? And we, again, as program leads, right, we know the policy at a much deeper level. We know the processes, and we know our coursework at a much deeper level. So why not leverage that to help actually advocate for our candidates? Last two slides, I'm putting this data slide up one more time because there are some pieces on it that the data doesn't show that's helpful for us to hold out there as program leads. So in all but 3 of these instances, candidates had expired credentials. What that means is these are candidates that were not able to go back to their job teaching. Right? They had lost their jobs teaching. 2 of these candidates were working on, getting a sub permit, a 30-day sub permit, so they could remain in their classroom. And this last candidate, called me and he said, "Hi, Jay." He's like, I got sent home from work today. I said, "I know." He's like, "My credential expired." And I said, "I know." And he's like, "I'm working on my 30-day sub permit." And I said, "Yep." I said, you've got a qualifying score for your secondary passing standard. Where are you at on your second TPA? And he actually had received his score back on a second TPA, and it came back with a condition code. He used the wrong forms. So it wasn't that he, didn't pass. He had used the wrong forms. And I was like, "Look, here's what we need to work on together." I'm like, "Let's get your stuff on the right form. Here's the forms. Get it on the right form." He'd used like the wrong credential form, right? I said, "And then let's meet once you get your scores back." Because I said, we as a program can see if you have enough evidence from coursework and clinical practice to qualify for that secondary passing standard. And he just started crying. He was just like, he's like, "I can't thank you enough." He's like, "I tell my mom, like my mom thanks you enough." Like he was really moved. And he said, "I tell my colleagues about this program, that if they want to be teachers, they need to come to your program." He said, "I can't express how much your support means." Here we have a teacher, he was in his 4th year teaching, right? He was 3 years on an intern credential in SPED. He's in his 4th year. He's unable to be in the classroom teaching. And here is not just an opportunity, but here's a way back in. And here are pieces of like we are helping our teachers navigate a complex system and remain in the teaching profession. And so when we look at this data piece and we look at this process through the lens of equity, we as the holders of institutional knowledge, right, around these policies and practices can really help leverage that to support teachers in remaining in the profession. And when I think about, one of the mission of the CTC is to diversify our workforce. When I look at this small sample size and see the demographics and know each of my candidates' stories, I feel it's even more important to ensure that we have a process where we can support our teachers in navigating that. So that's what the data doesn't show. And that's the driver of my work. And here's our most recent intern class, our graduates from last year. And this is the why behind the work that we do. So I want to thank you all so much for listening in and for what you all have shared. And I hope that this has sparked some thinking in ways that you can go back and enhance the processes within your program to support candidates in navigating this system. And I think there was a hand raised somewhere, and I don't know if I still see it. Did someone else have another question?
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Jay. It was just a lot of different ideas and for our staff and faculty to think about. And I really appreciate looking at removing barriers from candidates to make sure that they achieve and continue their dream to become a teacher. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Cool. If you have questions later on, my email is on the front slide of today's presentation. So you're welcome to reach out. If you're folks on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn link is, I think, on the 2nd or 3rd slide, but please, no one should go at this alone. Let's collaborate and be up to good work together. So thank you all so much for your time. I'm happy to hang on for a little bit if folks have questions, and if not, give yourself a little eyeball break before you head to the next Zoom. Thanks.